Well, if we had to interview just the legends of various, silos in South Africa, various industries, various arts, various considerations, various contributions to South Africa, this man would be in the top, on the top of the list of people in theatre in this country who've really done an absolutely sterling job over a long and prolific career. In fact, if you look on Wikipedia, they describe him as being arguably South Africa's preeminent playwright after Athol Fugard. That's no slouch. Paul Slabolepszy is a prolific writer and performer. He was a founder, member of Space Theatre, which was South Africa's first non-racial theatre company. He did that with Athol Fugard, with Yvonne Bryceland and John Carney in 1972. And ever since then, he has not only been doing serious and important things in theatre, but he's been entertaining us properly on television and on the stage for the longest time. It's very good to have you here, sir, and what a pleasure to have you in our studio.
Thanks, Gareth. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Paul. So, how are you, first of all? Last time we caught up was probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'm looking old. You're looking good.
Just keep on going. No, things are great at the moment. In fact, I'm very busy. I mean, I got a new play opening at Hilton in a couple of weeks, as well as Palace that I wrote in 82.
Yes, we'll talk about Palace just now, because that's a revival.
Yeah, it's a revival. So, like, what's it, 40? How many? What's that? 42, 41 years or something? Crazy. I mean, it's hard to think that you're jumping around the stage 41 years ago. Jeez. And doing it again for the first time back in Joburg.
So, I mean, let's start with something which I think we left off with last time, because you're synonymous with so many things in South Africa, and when people see your face, they go, "Oh wow, it can't possibly be that he's written something new." You're always writing new things.
Yeah,
you're always doing new things. You haven't lost your love of it at all, have you?
No, it's just I love storytelling. So I find a new story. I mean, I'm working with Trolley Man at the moment.
Yeah,
with these trolley guys, and I'm writing a Trolley Man movie, actually, not a play.
About these guys are the rubbish trolleys on the. It's a very South African thing here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world.
No, and it's fascinating, the lives, and the different, also the guys who've got university degrees, and then guys who sweep streets, and so it's fantastic. And so I'm always looking for stories and just enjoying telling them, meeting new people and hearing their stories.
So talking about stories, your story is actually a fascinating one, and I don't want us to just talk about what you're doing at the moment today, because it's always nice to do a little bit of a retrospective, and with you there's plenty of material.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you originally wanted to get into radio.
Yeah. In fact, there was a funny thing at UCT called BA Broadcasting.
Yeah?
Oh, shit, geez, I should have brought it up. I threw it away yesterday because I'm moving out of my study now, and I found this assessment from the Cape Town studios, SABC. Oh, shit.
The ones there on Sea Point.
Yeah. I tore it up because of this is so shit. It said that my...
No, those are the things you must keep. Where they give you a bad review.
A bad review.
What did they say?
Terrifying. Well, they said that I projected too much on the mic.
Oh no.
And then my standard English wasn't that hot. Well, I came from the Limpopo Valley, so what can you expect?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And a couple of things, and it's almost like, no, he won't succeed. But I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, so it didn't matter, I mean, I wasn't going to be a sort of conventional SAFM kind of person. I was interested in being the new Charles Fortune.
Oh yeah, he was a voice. Huh?
Yeah, he was
a cricket commentator, wasn't he?
That's right. He was like one of the best in the world. Everyone knew Charles Fortune.
Wow.
Always went, and the seagulls fly over the Sydney cricket ground. He was used to.
Oh wow!
And he went on till he was about 86, until he got the batsmen mixed up and stuff, and the bowlers. Wow. And then they said, "Listen, Charles, you better leave now." But that's what I wanted to do, and that's how I got to the drama school thing, because we had to go to UCT campus at Heading Hall.
So acting was like your second choice?
Well, no, when I got there...
Because, I mean, I've never met anyone who would have put radio first except for you. And you ended up not doing it.
No, well, look, I mean, I was...
radio is usually where people go when they can't get anything else to work. So, I mean, you went about it the opposite way.
Look, but I was a kind of a journalist. When I was at school, I played every sport going. And that's why I was going to be a sports commentator.
Right.
And I was writing for the Northern Review in Petersburg when I was 16 years old because they had no reporter. So I was reporting on all the games. So whenever I had to, I scored goals, I couldn't use my name. So I'd say the left wing scored brilliantly from the corner flag. So that's, and so that's what I wanted to do because I only knew sport, no drama, no nothing, no culture whatsoever. I grew up in a cultural backwater, the right-wing areas of the country, Witbank, Messina, Petersburg. It was, and that's why a lot of my plays deal with racism, especially from those days, because of the things I saw and experienced,
And what did your family think of you at that point, going into something that was like a bit of a soft...
Well, my dad wanted me to be an engineer, you see, and I said, listen, please let me do
He was Polish.
Yeah, Polish. Right. Yeah, he was an engineer.
He was a Polish refugee to England.
No, he was a pilot, Spitfire pilot. He was in the...
Really?
Yeah, he was in the Polish arm of the Royal Air Force.
Jeez, you know what?
He flew planes in Poland until they had no more planes. Yeah. And then he was a prisoner of war and he escaped from Romania. And he just wanted to get to England to fight in the war.
Listen, I often say to people, unless you've actually heard from Polish people what happened in 1939, there are these unbelievable stories. You're a storyteller. You could probably do this better than me. But these stories about these Polish families who found armor from the 1500s, put it on, got on horseback and rode with lances out to meet the Blitzkrieg.
Cavalry.
I mean,
they rode on their horses.
Can you imagine anything more noble, more brave than, these incredible... proud people who were just steamrolled by that German war machine.
That's all they could do, yeah. My dad's story, he was 19 years old, and he tells the story of, it was at his house, and his mother came out to the front door. He was in his Air Force uniform. The truck came past, jumped on the truck, and off he went. And he didn't see her for 30 years,
But she made it.
She made it. She
survived.
She survived, but his father had died in the meantime. But he was 19 when he left. And then so he was flying in England at age 20 already. It's crazy. It's like, So, and then he didn't. England was a bit tough to the Poles after the war.
Still is.
Yeah, it still is to foreigners. They were great. They were heroes. They saved Britain in the in the Battle of Britain, in the Spitfires and the Hurricanes.
Absolutely. So he was one of the pilots in the Battle of Britain.
Yeah. Well, no, he wasn't flying at that stage. And then after the war, he said, like, what are they going to do? And I mean, it's a story that I always tell. I'm writing a memoir about it,
Beautiful.
And our time with Billy and my whole career. But he had my grandfather's hat. And he put Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and USA, South Africa into the hat, little pieces of paper. And he went, my mum put her hand in, pulled out South Africa. I mean, I could have been in Chicago. I could have been in Australia.
You might have had, more people who appreciated theatre if you'd gone to
if I'd gone there. But also if I'd gone to the States, I would have been perfect age for the Vietnam War. Because, a lot of the immigrants went to Vietnam, and so if I'd gone to Chicago, then
isn't it amazing? And you must think about this a lot more than I do because you've got like life experience under the belt that I still have to get. But you think about these chance encounters with fate, and how your dad pulled a country out of a hat. And that's how you ended up here. Yeah. And the contribution you've made to South Africa ever since. The fact that you're about as South African as anybody I know.
Yeah.
Like you've even helped to define things in South African culture. Dory reminded me when we were waiting for you to arrive about in the center, Mr. Venter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still people who say, they don't know where it comes from now, but they say it, and you invented that.
It's funny, the guys are rehearsing Palace now at the moment. I was there with the read-through on Tuesday, and the guy says, you say GCM, GCM. Forsey keeps saying GCM. What is GCM? I said, geez, I can't remember. So anyway, old Charlie Googles it, says, Paul Slabolepszy, 1982. So it's Google.
You invented it.
It says it there. And it says, I brought it back to prominence. It was,
well, you couldn't say Jesus.
Yeah, it was like OMG today. GCM
right,
is
right.
like, I think it's Jesus, God, and Mary or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing, like GCM, Vince, you can't do that. So it's interesting that it...
But you have. I mean, these are not small things. You can be humble about it. But the fact is, for South Africans to be using these catchphrases, these terms, which you had a hand in inventing, is no small thing. It's made us a unique and culturally very diverse and interesting country.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, kind of the slang of the day, you know, like tune me and I'm
You
level
did that
the
too.
gravel and all of these kind
Level
of
with the gravel.
Level,
you know, my dad used to say that to me too. That's also one of yours.
No. That's what you all said. But I'm saying it's, you know, that language still remains.
Look,
like
even
I'm
if
an
you
ahoy.
didn't invent it, because of the work that you did on screen and on stage, it made it kind of de rigueur, you know?
And like in the center, Mr. Fenton, where's the cheese, oh bees? All of those. In fact, that was me and Billy. We did that Iron J Steakhouse Melts thing.
Yes.
And we did the copy. They gave us this copy and it was so boring. So when we'd finished, we shot the whole thing in about an hour. And we said, listen, can we do our own version? And everyone looked at each other and the copywriters looked a bit
Oh boy,
shaky.
and the ad agency.
Yeah, and they looked, and they said, and the director said, "Now, come on, let's shoot it." And we shot it, and of course, that's what came out. I mean, when the guys are playing golf,
So good.
golf tournaments around the world, they say that ball is in the center, Mr. Fenter, and I said, "That's us. That is nice.
That's spectacular.
It is. That's like,
That's
and we
no
weren't paid
small-
for that, by the way.
Yeah.
These copywriters get a fortune.
You know, you mentioned Bill Flynn, and again, there's someone who I always associate in my mind. I always put you two together.
Yeah.
You did so many years of work together.
Yeah.
And it's been a while now. He died in 2007.
Yeah, 2007. That's right.
It's been a long time, but I still, I had to like check myself before we started this interview and think,
Can't believe it.
like, how long has it been?
Yeah. Yeah, we met at drama school. We were both 18. We were the first rugby players at UCT drama school. Because no rugby
The
players.
twain did not mix.
Yeah. And that's how we became mates because I was saying, geez, I'm arrived at drama school and, there are a lot of wonderful babes around. In fact, Rosie van der Gut was the professor, thought that Billy and I were just there for the chicks,
girls.
You know? Yeah. for
You
the
might
girls.
have been.
Yeah, well, half of it's true. But anyway, so we both played rugby. He played for False Bay. I played UCT under 20. And so that's when we met. And we both went to the space together. He came up to Joburg a bit later than I did. But for 40 years, we just created mayhem. We did our own stuff. We made movies.
Do you miss him?
Oh, yeah. I used to miss him kind of every day. It's not as bad as that now. But for about 3 or 4
That's
years.
just because your memories go.
No, I used to get very emotional, you know.
I'm sure.
Look, I still think of Bill quite often. And it's weird. I have dreams every now and again, once every 3 or 4 months, I dream there's Billy. And I'm going, it's weird you're around, but you're supposed to be not here, you know. So it's kind of weird. It's very weird. But look, you had 40 years, eh? In the 40 years that we did all the stuff in South African theatre, we were in contact. We never had 2 weeks in all those 40 years where we weren't making contact. So we're either working together thousands and thousands of hours at night on stage, in rehearsal, doing radio, doing movies, doing television. Yeah, so, it was crazy.
It's amazing how those sort of partnerships seem to happen. You know, I mean, in IT, they always talk about Hewlett and Packard, who started the first computer business back in the day. They're all these great collaborations, Fry and Laurie, you know, from a comedy point of view in the UK. And you can go through compendia of these things. And it's interesting how, like, people often who are quite different. I mean, you two are certainly very different looking. You brought different things to the shows. But it just seems to work better when they're two. And it's easier and it flows. And then, of course, you can go on like Lennon and McCartney eventually did their own thing.
Went solo.
But in the beginning,
yeah.
it was essential that they were together.
Yeah, that partnership, I mean, it was almost unstoppable. You know, I mean, the heel against the head, the rugby play. I mean, we ran that 3 or 4 years. We did I don't know how many thousand performances we did. But we ran that for 3 years, you know, and then did gigs. And we were invited to open stadium, you know, the Ellis Park Stadium for the Currie Cup final. We entertained the crowd, you know. So there was crazy things in those years, you know. That was that collaboration, the two of us. It was Chocky and Crispin, you know, that sort of thing. Like, well, Palace was Forsey and Vince, and then Chocky and Crispin. So this double act that we kind of had going, and we used to bring it to life in different, you know, iterations.
Do you think there's a kind of magic, a sort of simpatico thing that happens with people who you click with and can work with for that long? Because people try to manufacture it and it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's just somehow
it clicks. Also, it's the yin and the yang. It's quite funny in real life. Billy was the boozer and the wild one, crazy one, and I was like the shy kind of. But when we were partners in movies or plays, I was the bad guy.
You inverted it.
I was a rough guy. Billy was the innocent little teddy bear that all the girls wanted to hug and be mummy to, So that was the kind of... And it always worked. It always worked. Billy was the slightly doff character who was looking for... And I was the bad guy. Let's do this, let's do that, let's get drunk,
No, I mean...
So playing opposites.
It's often hard for me to even... separate the characters because there's so many of them that have been part of so many of our stories.
Yeah.
And when I think about, I don't think about one character. You mentioned a couple of them now.
Yeah.
And I just thought, it's in my head, it's almost like an amalgamation.
Yeah.
Is it difficult for you when you're playing a new character that you've written, or when you're reviving an old one as you're doing now with The Palace? Is it difficult to kind of separate those in your head because you've played so many?
Yeah. Look, I mean, this Palace now, obviously, it's young guys playing it. So I'm just around to advise or give, they want to ask any questions, they do it. Because we were in our early 30s when we did Palace. I'm writing stuff. If I do stuff for myself now, of course, I'm writing older characters. But it's nice to see youngsters coming in and playing the stuff.
But what I mean is when you tell these youngsters now, you're giving them advice on how to play the characters. Do you have to dig into the depths of your memory for this stuff, or is it still crystal clear to you? Because you actors have an ability that I'm very jealous of. It's that you can learn stuff, you can perform stuff, and you can re-inhabit those characters almost at will. I've seen it happen, and you're one of those people who could do that.
Yeah. No, we remember the times, and it's like part of your... in fact, there's a movie I did just before COVID called Mr. Johnson, about a guy who has a motorbike accident in 1973 or whatever, and wakes up 47 years later. It's called Mr. Johnson. It's on Showmax, actually. I think it's still on Showmax.
Good.
Yeah. And
check that out.
Look, it's not... I didn't write the movie. I came aboard late. In fact, I wish I'd come aboard earlier to work a bit more on the script. But it's a guy who has this motorbike accident. So he wakes up like age 73 and thinks he's 25 because he's been in a coma for 47 years.
Sure.
And sometimes I feel like that. Like I said to the guy, the director, I said, you cast me, I'll give you the language we used in 73. Because he wakes up and says, hey, you guys got a Coke float? And he walks into an internet cafe and goes, I'd like a Coke float, please. He doesn't know what the fuck internet is,
No.
And so the guy says, looks at him, you got a brown cow? You remember Coke floats and brown cow?
Yeah.
You're too young.
No, I remember Coke floats.
Yeah.
Brown cow. What's
brown
brown
cow was milk and milk and Coke was a brown cow.
God, people they used to drink that?
Yeah. I think it was milk and Coke or an ice cream and Coke. I can't remember.
You guys didn't know what you were eating and drinking in those days.
Yeah. But it's crazy, like parfaits and what else do we have at roadhouses? But anyway, so it was nice to be able to go back, like guy sees a cell phone, doesn't know what the hell it is, starts bleeping and freaks out. Often I feel like that, like Rip Van Winkle, you wake up after
and also people ask you to reprise old stuff because they loved it so much. Do you ever get annoyed when people, they say, it's like any artist. I mean, I heard an interview with John Cleese the other day where he said, he's so sick of doing the Monty Python stuff.
Yeah, because people ask.
And he's done so much since then, he says. And in fact, he's more proud of some of the stuff he's done recently because it's so much more pithy,
Like I hate it, like people come, oh, you're the comedian. I'm not the comedian. I write comedy and I do comedy sometimes, but I'm not the comedian. Billy was more of the comedian, but he also didn't do stand-up comedy or anything. He was a comedy actor, but also a straight actor, a very serious actor. I mean, I still get guys saying, in Heel Against the Head, I wear these Y-front underpants with the South African flag.
I remember.
Yeah. And I say, I support my country supports me. Yeah. So I still get guys, in a shopping mall, hey, I support my country supports me. And people are looking, what? And then I have to explain to them because one forgets. That was like 95. So how many years ago is that? We're coming up for 30 years. 2 years' time, it'll be 30 years ago that we did Heel Against the Head,
Oh, it's
crazy.
Well, listen, time flies. You mentioned this movie, and COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID was bloody hard on everyone
Yeah,
in entertainment in this country. I think a lot of people lost not only their confidence, they lost a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them lost their livelihoods completely.
Yeah. I wrote 3 plays. I got no money during COVID. So 2.5 years.
You were productive, but there's no income.
Right. Yeah, so I had 4 plays lined up at the end of COVID to start. I mean, I've still got plays lined up from.
But how did you survive?
Oh, God, it's a long story. My wife is a sculptor, and she makes his animals, his hares and cats and dogs, and so she just kept selling those during COVID because she could just courier them and stuff, you know. So that kept us going. If it hadn't been for that, I think. Well, look, I had to sell my house. Fortunately, my daughter bought it. But it ruined so many people's lives, especially in our industry. You know, I mean, I met great people who went onto Zoom. New York, I met actors and thespians and theatre practitioners in New York and see 38 people on the screen, meet people I normally would never have met and exchanged ideas. But there was no money there. It was just a whole new avenue.
And do you think it's coming back? Because people have been starved now for a while, and I think they're hungry for entertainment.
They are. And, there are also connections. I made connections during COVID because you're sitting in your own little cave,
Nothing else to do, so you have to.
do. And at least we had the internet and laptops and stuff like that,
But you're probably the best person to ask this. There's no substitute for that relationship between a live audience and someone on a stage.
That's what I missed most. I was talking to someone the other day about this thing about live theatre. We made a movie of Palace, and it was a great movie, but it was harrowing to watch. Now, a play, the reaction between audience and the actors is amazing. I mean, they're at a roadhouse at 2:00 in the morning, somewhere in the Boksburg, Benoni, Brakpan Triangle, at 2 in the morning in 1982. And you are there. You can smell the burgers and stuff being cooked inside the
special,
roadhouse.
hey?
Yeah, it's special. And this incident happens in front of them. I mean, I've warned the actors, they're going to get screams. I mean, they're going to get people yelling and shouting. I mean, the guys are shouting at me, come right, And also, like the K word, it was used like 40, 50 times in the play. It was 1982.
And you're authentically putting that in.
It's exactly as it was.
You're not going to do what they're doing in America now and try to sanitize these things.
Can't. You see, if we sanitize
big
Palace, which is a real incident at a roadhouse in 82, in the dark days of apartheid, then it's like saying, these guys didn't swear at the black guys.
It wasn't as bad as they said it was.
It wasn't as bad as they said it was. So you have to have it warts and all. If you don't, then you're really... Then what's the point of doing it?
I'm so pleased you're doing that because there are many people who, just to avoid controversy, will clear out anything that doesn't fit with the modern understanding of how the world works. And what they're doing is they're actually doing everyone who survived and those who didn't a huge disservice.
Yeah. Well, look, you can't be woke with Palace. There's no way. You can't.
Do you think those people will come?
But I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of moaning and groaning. I mean, like
you're ready for
Vince smokes on stage, okay? So he's had this whole thing about, can he light up? I know in England and Germany, for example, you're not allowed to. That you say no, you cut all smoking from the play. So I said, look, if you're doing a play that is you want to be historically correct, a guy lights up. He takes his unfiltered smoke, he lights.
Absolutely.
So, if you want to I call them vegetarian cigarettes. Those they haven't got nicotine in them. They've got, I don't know what they are.
I don't know. It sounds like horrible, nasty shit.
You buy that. You can buy them. They're cigarettes that haven't got.
They make the smoke.
Yes, they make the smoke.
Because you need the visual stuff for your show, right?
Yeah. So you can buy those.
So they're using those, or they're using the real?
Yeah, they're using those.
Okay.
I call them vegetarian.
Is that because they now got smoke alarms all over the place?
No. That's because people are. For the non-smokers there's a lot of non-smokers. People don't smoke anymore.
My parents still smoke. They smoked the whole way through my childhood.
Yeah, so.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think we've become so sensitive. We've gone to the other extreme, where now we've got these people who can't even see a show and make a distinction between, first of all, fiction and non-fiction. Second of all, the past and the present.
Yeah. And it's not as if there's like 25 guys on the stage smoking. It's one little cigarette. It gets smoked for about 3 minutes and then gets put out. But anyway,
you have to waste your time thinking about this.
Always.
Unbelievable. So let's just tell people, because the play Saturday night at the Palace will once again grace the Gauteng stage. It's 41 years after the debut. back in 1982. It's going to be at the Joburg Theatre, 28th of July to 28th August. So for a whole month, but book now because this is gonna sell out. So Saturday night at the Palace going to have the same impact, I'm sure, as it did back in the 1980s, because it caused trouble for you then.
Look, trouble. You see, the nation went crazy for it because it starts off with comedy, like I love to do with my plays. These two guys arrive in the night. They've been at a party. There's been a lot of booze, and it's very funny for about half an hour, 40 minutes. It's very, very funny, and then we see South Africa. South Africa, 1982. And we traveled the world with it. We went to Sweden, we went to Ireland, we went to Old Vic in London. So it was impactful wherever we played. And it was part of our lives for 4 years. And then we made the movie, of course, So,
I mean, it's amazing that you decided to set it in the East Rand, because the East Rand's provided quite a lot of talent from this country. Huh? We've got a princess in Monaco. We've got an award-winning actress in Hollywood. Yeah,
and you remember Bernaldus Niemand?
There's tons of people who've come out of
Phillips,
there. Yeah. It actually seems to be a place of
great,
unique talent.
The cherry-faced lurchers. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so when you put something like this together, do you ever think about legacy? And I don't mean putting something on that you wrote back in 1981, 82, but I mean the whole catalogue of your work. Yeah. Do you think about legacy when you're writing it? Obviously not.
Not too much, but funny enough, I've just finished. I lost a lot of Making Like America that we did in '86. Marius Veyers, myself, Nicky Ribello, and Lida Meyring. And it was a play about guys setting up a robbery. It was a kind of almost like a Stander type thing around the time of Stander or before. And it's a great play about the robbery that goes wrong and the cops outside. And I've always. I thought, I've got to publish this play. I've got to get it together. And so I've just finished. I want to bring it back again.
Yes.
Because it's so South African. It's so, the mother comes out the back and the cops are outside. She says, is it Mandela? Is it Mandela? I think Mandela's, broken out of prison. So there's so many things about the play that are historically amusing, but also pertinent. And I'd like those things to live. I'd like someone down the years to do that and say, listen, this is what we were. This is South Africa, We have a history. It's been So in that respect, I'd like the plays to live. So I'm not looking at a legacy as such, but I need, I think Adam Small said to know the future or to know where we are, you have to know the past. You have to know the past to know where we are now and also where we're going in the future.
Which, again, is one of the reasons I get irritated when I see people trying to rewrite history or trying to sanitize it or make it fluffy and inviting, is that they very often are the same people who've never read a history book.
Yeah.
They haven't picked up any kind of historical knowledge along the way. And if you don't know that stuff, you can't really know where you are now.
Absolutely. And also what happened, why, what was it like? You need to know. The kids today don't know. Often I do a kind of a masterclass in storytelling and I talk about my history, and while I'm telling them, helping screenwriters now, how do you write a good screenplay? How do you write a good play? So I give a class and I'm amazed how little kids today know about what the past was like, what happened, what was apartheid, what was it like, and the players to show it, and it's important, I think.
There's never you don't get writer's block. You don't sometimes sit there and go, I don't have any material. Where do you get your ideas?
Look, I get, I'm over it now. I used to get worried about it in the past, but you hit the wall all the time. Now I just leave it and move to something else. And then it comes back again very quickly.
So you have like a bunch of projects going at once.
I've always got a whole bunch of stuff. I've got a movie going or a play, and then, but I don't stress anymore if I hit the wall because I know it's going to come back. Because I've had so many years. I've written 38 plays and about 15 movies. So
it's unbelievable. That's quite something. Some people write one good one in their life. There's this interesting comparison. I think Malcolm Gladwell made it between. For example, he chose Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs, of which a few of them obviously became massive, massive hits. But he never titivated and reworked and thought about this again and rearranged the instruments. And Leonard Cohen wrote Hallelujah. He worked on that thing for like 40 years and was never happy with it.
Wow.
I mean, you're obviously more of a Bob Dylan. Picasso was the artist, and then I think he used Monet as the opposite.
Yeah.
Or Cézanne.
No, I just write. I mean, I find a new story, not every day, but often I run into new stories and I hear something or I pick up something and then I think that's interesting. And then I might do some research and then follow
And it
it
just
up.
pours out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was telling stories when I was 3.5 at the Modderfontein Dynamite Factory nursery school. They said Paul stood on a little box and he entertained the whole nursery school. And when we lived in Messina, I stood under the baobab tree and just improvised stories. So I've always this performing and storytelling has always been like part of my life,
Have any of your kids inherited this?
Yeah, my daughter, she teaches drama at St. John's. So,
Okay.
Yeah, she was interested in it. I'm glad she's teaching. She's got a great job and she teaches drama. She's a great teacher. And so it's like what I call a regular job. I always laugh, I say that Billy and I, when we did Heel Against the Head, that put my 3 kids through varsity. If it hadn't been for Heel, we were playing to 1,000 people a night at the Civic.
Jesus, that's
for
incredible.
4 weeks on the trot, toured the whole country. And then after that, it went down again, down to our bones of our arse again. But so that's the business, It's when you freelance in theatre, it's up and it's down, and it's up and it's down. But I'd never have changed it for anything. I've had such a ball, And the stories, that's why I've got to finish this book. I was going to write one called Flying with Flynn, just our 40 years. There's enough to fill 3 books.
Absolutely. No, but I like also the fact that you'll include stuff of, your fathers and your mothers and things like that, because I was talking to Peter Dirk Ace a little while ago, who, just like you, is an absolute legend in South Africa. And he was telling me, and I don't think he's told too many stories about his own parents and his mother and the piano and, his friendship with Sophia Loren, which is something I think a lot of people don't know about. Yeah. It's fascinating to hear these things because it gives us a more complete picture of the person. Yeah. And all these characters you've played does muddy the water a little bit when it comes to you, because we're like, who's Paul really? Because we think you're this amalgamation of all of them.
It's crazy, you got all these things, like when we played at the Old Vic, for example, they had a sort of a past and present party, and they had a party for all the people who were working on the West End at that time. And there was Christopher Reeves, our Superman. He was there with John Gielgud and Glenda Jackson.
You're talking about
all of the legends, and
luminaries.
There was before Christopher Reeves had his accident. Superman. Obviously everyone knows.
Sure, the horse.
And he had a bald patch at the back. I said, geez, Superman's bald. Now people don't know that. Of course, when you're in the movies, they wear these hair pieces and stuff.
Cover it up.
Bald. And things like that public don't kind of know that, that this actor, everyone thinks, oh, he always looks great, but he's actually got a bald patch at the back of it. So these funny things that come up, in the course of your life. And there's Billy and I pinching ourselves. We're playing, and there's the Royal Box at in the Old Vic. And, there's the Prince and... who's that? Princess so-and-so come to watch the play. And it's all like part of, and here we're doing Brakpan, Benoni, Boksburg.
But isn't that cool? Those are, someone once said to me that at the end of it all, you've only got the memories. Yeah. And you'll hope that they'll flash through in a really nice slideshow before you go, and it better be bloody interesting, right?
Yeah,
and you've got enough slides in there.
And
you think of some people, and I feel very sorry for some people because their lives may never be as exciting as just a week in your life. But when you look back and you take stock and you're actually grateful for the things that you've done and seen, you must have some incredible interactions with people and stories stored up in your head.
Yeah.
Even ones that you've never told.
Connections. Look, one has to be also realistic. South Africa's not... This is not Hollywood or being a big star in England. I always think that if Billy and I had the same kind of career in the States or in England or anywhere else, we'd be doing fine. We did not really, we wouldn't be, because our industry here is really small, and we kind of realized that when we toured overseas. You get to places like Copenhagen or something, you see the theaters where people are arriving by the train load, and the profile is so much higher, and the people are so much more part of elite's the wrong word, but you're in a different stratosphere, you know, there.
They're not in survival mode.
Yeah.
And they have time to consider culture, entertainment in a serious way.
It's really respected right across, you know, at least there's a big enough audience for it, you know. In South Africa, you're kind of all scraping the barrel.
And do you think that's got better or worse?
Look, there's a lot of, like, television now sort of, you know, it's just like blowing up, you know, like Showmax and Netflix and all of these, like, that's why I do a lot of these workshops, because the hungry monster of television will never end. And it's that field is growing. When we were sort of starting out, and for many, many years, we struggled because television, you get 1 or 2 gigs on television. Now that is opening up at Amazon now. So South African writers and actors can be seen worldwide. You know, people go on to what internet has done and everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's opening up. Theatre's always going to have a bit of a problem because you have to go there, buy your ticket and go and sit there, be live. But there's still nothing to beat that live experience. I mean, you get such a vibe. Even seeing a musical, seeing it live is much better than watching it on your laptop, you know.
Definitely.
It's unforgettable experiences you have. So theatre, the live experience can never be matched. And, you know, when people say theatre's dying, it can never die, because you always hunger for that connection between the actors on stage and the audience. Something happens, you know. There's a two-way communication.
And whenever you used to go and perform overseas, and you did a lot of these, you did Sweden, Denmark, the Middle East, Australia, France, Germany, the US, UK. You went all over the place. Did you have to tailor any of that to the audience, or did you just hope they'd get it, or did they just get it?
Look, people see. Like, you might be in Chicago and see a Polish play, you know, and Americans are going to see it. So I
mean, people all over the world's seen what Dostoevsky wrote.
Yeah, we'll see.
They might not be miserable Russians, but they get it.
Yeah, you'll see different languages.
Sure.
You know, in Sweden, we thought, when we took Palace to Sweden, we thought, these guys, they're not going to know what to say. But a lot of them speak English, and they followed the play. So, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't been to Australia. My plays have been there. My plays have been, like, I haven't been to the Middle East either.
I've heard you're not missing anything.
People have done people have done my plays there.
Okay,
but I've been to, like, UK and France and America,
Do you? Is there anywhere you still want to go? Is there anywhere that, like, you've got a burning ambition to either be on stage in that country, or?
I said I've got to play New York. I've got to play New York, and that's like quite funny. Like, but that's what I want to do, because I played London and I played Munich and Copenhagen and places, but I want to play London. I mean, I want to play New York, because. Kind of New York for me is like a center of the universe. I mean, I love the city. It's just,
it is, though.
Yeah, I've been there a few times, and it's like you could see an alien on Broadway walking down the street,
and no one would bat
an eyelid.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, you never know who's listening. There might be some New York agent who's currently looking for someone to put something on, but. Yeah. It's an energy thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, there's just such an energy in that place, and everyone wants to be a star, everyone wants to be noticed.
But also the mixture, the people, it's every kind of human and non-human thing.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like it's a melting pot of the world, you know. That's what I love, you know, when Trump goes on about can't let immigrants in. I mean, America, that's just immigrants. They are just immigrants, you know. That's what makes it so special, that you can suddenly feel.
Absolutely.
You know, the Italian side of New York, where you can still be Italian, but yet be American, you know.
So the return of Elvis Dupisani was the play that won more awards than any other play in the history of South African theatre.
Yeah, we just rattled them off.
That's bloody amazing. I mean, what do you think it was about that story?
Well, we just exploded. We're like a tsunami across the nation. Look, no one had ever seen a play like that before. I mean, it's funny, Athol was doing Master Harold and the Boys and great plays and stuff, but they were very, like, what Palace was, a kind of a visceral experience. I mean, a lot of people, I laugh, some people said, a lot of people left for Australia after seeing the play because they didn't want to live in a country like this.
Sure.
I mean, we used to have security police coming. By the time the government woke up to what the play was doing, 20,000 people had already seen it. So it became, people said, have you seen this play? And that happens not once in a lifetime, once every generation. You have a play that people say, hey, have you seen this? If you haven't seen it, then you haven't lived kind of story. And that's what Palace was like. And I think it was because it was such a... I mean, we used to have people arriving at the theatre saying, where's the screen? Where's the screen? We said, there's no screen. What do you mean? Where's the screen?
Because they'd never seen a play before.
They'd never seen a play. So now people are going to come here. What's that thing on the stage? That's a roadhouse. A motorbike's coming on this stage, and you're going to see people. They couldn't believe. So that's what was happening. People who'd never, ever been inside a theatre before.
I mean, that's also a hell of
insane.
An accolade, hey? To bring those people in,
and
to show them what could be done on a stage.
And also give them that experience. And that's, you see, you don't find people in a movie house going, come right, man. But when I had guys with tomahawks in the audience, when Vince starts getting heavy with September, at 2:00 in the morning, and there's only Forsey there to help him. Audience members wanting to jump out of their seats and Bliksem me, They wanted to jump up and beat him up, beat the character up. And then also in Bloemfontein, when the rector of the University of the Free State brought his lecturers, and full house. We played 4 weeks in Bloem, sold out every night, 500-seater, because people had heard about this play. And in the middle of the performance, this rector stands up saying, Lions, lies, take these people away. They wanted to ban us. And 40 of his colleagues got up and they stormed out of the theatre, and the rest of the audience stayed to the end of the play.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, these experiences as a performer, it's a movie. It happens on a movie screen. The actors don't know what's happening. But when it's live and you're on this knife edge, what's going to happen now? And you hear this rector of university screaming at the top of his lungs. You realize how you've affected someone. And they say, can theatre change people's lives?
Oh, definitely.
Well, there's an example.
Oh, yeah.
And screaming. Because this was 1983 when we were in Bloem, okay? So now in the dark days of apartheid, everything's lovely. The blacks have their place, the whites have their place, the country is fine. See this play. This is what's happening at 2:00 in the morning.
Did you ever feel like you might have got yourself into too much trouble?
Yeah. Peter Dirk has always said to me, you are so lucky you did not write this play in Afrikaans, because it would have been taken off on the first night.
Really?
They'd have walked in there next day and said, off. Ooh, sorry, bang your mic. Off the stage, off, finish. They'd have closed it. But because we're English guys, it kind of slipped under the radar. And by the time they woke up, 20,000 people, as I said, already.
Because you could very well have gone to jail, hey?
No.
This was a very serious thing. People, again, because they don't read history, I mean, at that time, you would have been locked up.
Yeah.
You would have been considered a terrorist just for putting on a play.
Yeah. And saying what we were saying in the stage. Like, some guys said, this doesn't happen. We had people coming, afterwards in the foyer. We beat them in the bar downstairs because we was in for a dop after the beer.
Sure.
People saying, no, man. Some people saying, this doesn't happen. I say, what do you mean it doesn't happen? I've sucked this out of my thumb. You go to a roadhouse at 2:00 in the morning in Springs and have a look.
See what happens.
See what's happening. Because, I played soccer for Isco van der Bijl when I was at school. I had a mate who lived in Van der Bijl. And during the holidays, I'd go and play. And we'd go to the Roadhouse afterwards and see this on a nightly basis. I mean, that's where the play came from my real experiences of seeing things.
Tell me about what Joburg was like in the 70s and 80s. Because I've heard stories from people who are much older than me about the Lebs and the Greeks and the Poras and the Jews. And everybody was there were these power factions, especially among young guys.
Yeah.
They were all vying for the girls' attention. I mean, what kind of a world was Joburg then, from your memory?
I was a bit young still at that time. That DuckTales were kind of like before me. Yeah, there were DuckTales.
So what were the DuckTales?
Yeah, they were crazy. I mean, when I was 12, there were DuckTales around. I was a bit older, then they'd kind of moved on already. But when I played in Witbank, I used to play soccer as an under 12. And I remember this Portuguese guy coming in, they'd call him Porra, and, you know, and then he combed his hair with a little ducktail at the back and had these stovepipes, almost like those Chelsea boot type things, pointed boots, you know.
Yes.
And yeah, it was crazy times. And I think that came about, you know, a lot of the fathers were in the war, okay? And then they had no youth because they went off to war at age 18, 19. So their sons wearing tight jeans or tight trousers or stovies and stuff, they'd make them burn their trousers and that you can't wear them. So there's a jealousy between fathers and sons. And that's what gave rise, I think, to those kind of wild days, you know, and those characters. But
it must have been, I mean, to even catch the tail end of it, which you seem to have done.
And there were those things, the Boros and the Lebs and the Aitais and the you know.
I mean, the south of Joburg still has a reputation, you know, from those days. It doesn't earn or deserve it anymore.
No.
I mean, everything's very, very cosmopolitan now.
You see, things, but also things have changed. There's much more integration now.
Yeah.
But, you know, racism still exists, and that's why Palace is so important. Racism is still out there on a hectic scale.
And anyone who pretends it isn't. But it is easier now to be different, and it is easier now to integrate into things. And I mean, in those days, you just didn't see these people mixing.
No, except if you're in the States. I'm telling you, in the States right now is hectic.
Yeah.
This MAGA universe they're going back to beyond apartheid. It's beyond apartheid now. What's happening in Georgia? So? Oh, yeah, it's hectic. I mean, these MAGA Republicans trying to homophobia and so it's rampant racism. It's rampant. So America's in a bad place.
Did you ever experience post 1994 any feeling that you were maybe sidelined because you were white?
Yeah, not
because I mean,
so much.
let's not. I mean, I think a lot of your success was before, and a lot of it was after. So you're probably in a good position to be able to gauge this. But certainly arts and culture have kind of fallen off the priority list for this government.
Yeah, look, they did before as well. You know, the Nats didn't care.
They hated arts and culture.
Yeah,
unless it was like very conservative Afrikaans stuff, right?
They loved it when you did Shakespeare and all that sort of stuff.
But not Othello.
Yeah.
Not Othello.
Yeah, you never found, there was very few Othellos in those days. Well, also you couldn't. You had to have a white Othello painted black.
Oh, really?
That's the only way they could do that, you know.
But, madness.
It was crazy in those days. I mean, the hoops that we had to go through to put stuff on. And,
So I suppose it is easier to use a vegetable cigarette now.
Yeah.
And have to put up with that nonsense that you did then.
Yeah.
But after 94, obviously, there was a Ministry of Arts and Culture was supposed to have been, something that promoted South African art, music, theatre. Yeah. And I think theatre in this country has had a very, very tough time.
And, the sad thing is they don't realize that art and culture and stuff, that's what you start off with. That's your springboard to everything else.
That's how you measure a civilization.
Yeah, that's right. And hear the stories. And, because the stories tell you where you come from, where you are, where you're going. That's what stories do. And I don't think they realize that. They think it's fun.
When they meet someone like you, I think they first of all think of all the characters that you've played and perhaps they laugh or perhaps they smile or perhaps they cry, who knows. Yeah. But you definitely have an effect on people. But the other thing is that they probably imagine that you spend all your time around other people in theatre, which isn't necessarily true.
No.
That's your work.
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do you do to relax? Because you're an entertainer. When we're relaxing, we watch you.
I do.
What do you do when you're relaxing?
I do what everyone else does.
Watch sport?
I've always liked sport, but I do, this. Yeah, it's a normal kind of existence, Even though I'm often writing a lot of the time, I spend a lot of the day writing, but spend weekends with family and stuff. It's just a gig that I like doing. It's like I could never have been in an office or been a production engineer, or I think of my dad's life and that. I could never handle doing that schedule maintenance and telling people how they to do the products.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a storyteller. I like people. You know, I like hearing stories and sharing stories and. Yeah.
And are you friends with a lot of people that you've worked with over the years? You stay in contact with them?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a project, and then when the project's over, you don't see each other anymore.
Yeah, look, in and out of the industry, I'm friends with people in and out, right across the board. Yeah, look, when you're doing a play, it becomes a family for that period of time. You know, it's always the thing about you become a family, and it's sometimes like, I mean, the final night, like Fordsburg's Finest last year at Monte Casino, our final performance, me and Chimende, she's a Zimbabwean, she's a brilliant actress. It was just the two-handed, just the two of us. And on the final night, audience like standing ovation, and we just hugged each other and just burst into tears. And we were both like howling like babies. And the audience is going, wow, we're going, because we knew this is it. It's over. You know, we've done this whole long thing together every night. And, you know, we're each other's buddies. You know, we hold each other because two of us on stage, something goes wrong, other one's going to bail the other one out. So you become very, very close. And that's the great thing, too, about theatre. It's like you create families every time you do a show, you know.
You're the kind of person who can do improv as much as you can do scripted stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a preference? As a performer now, not as a writer? Obviously, if you're a writer, you want people to follow your bloody script. Otherwise, why go to the trouble of writing?
No, look, I don't like improv. I mean, things happen. Fordsburg's Finest opening night in Cape Town at the theatre on the Bay, where she's on stage alone, and my brother phones. He's coming down, a racist brother. He's coming down to beat up the blacks at this thing. She's this black woman on stage in the it was a used car lot. She's in the office, and my brother's phoning to come. He's coming, and on opening night, because the guy had mixed the memory sticks, the voice didn't come on the call. So the phone rang, and suddenly it was dead. And she's waiting. I said, "Where's the fucking phone call?" And I'm off stage. If there's no phone call, the play ends. There has to be the phone call because the play can't move.
So what happens?
So I'm standing there going, it's the end of the play. And it's not even halfway through. So I just came on. And I said, I've just been down at the corner creek. My boot was there. He came in, he's coming. So I had to do this I had to tell a whole story. To say this guy is coming, so we better get you out of here. So I was able to put the play back on the rails.
Oh, my God.
But I tell you.
And the audience had no idea.
Had no idea. But I'm shaking like a leaf, and she's looking at me going, and this is the joy, actually, of live stuff, because you have to think on your feet, you know. It's like, this isn't
But you love it. I can tell you love it. That's great. You said before we started this conversation that you're enjoying it now just like you enjoyed it at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's so important, right?
And you know, the funny thing is, you know, every time I go on stage, almost like every night I go, because Billy and I, whenever we perform together, we used to stand in the wings and go, we're going to gooi, we're going to gooi, we're going to gooi, we're going to gooi. And we did that every night. So now my ritual, since Billy has died, I stand in the wings and go, we're going to gooi, we're going to gooi. So I always kind of like, Billy's my like patron saint, if you like, and I always remember in the wings. So that night when that was happening, and I thought, the play is ending now. But it's like your death, you know, when they say if you die, your life flashes before you. I'm going, the play is over, the crits are going to say its thing, no one's going to come in Cape Town. It was a complete weird thing. And I almost felt this hand on my back shoving me on stage. It was like Billy was in the wings going, get on stage, man. Get on. Like, because I normally wouldn't get on. But I almost like felt a push. So, and there I'm on stage. It's like Billy had pushed me on stage. It was weird. It's a weird kind of experience, but I really kind of felt that. Billy said, get on there.
A lot of actors and producers and directors and people who work in stage and screen stuff say that those places, those theaters, if you're going to choose a place to be haunted, that's a good place.
Yeah, no, the ghosts
The
there.
Phantom of the Opera. But
yeah.
it's because there's so many people who've poured out their heart and soul on those stages.
Yeah.
And if you were an actor and you died, you would want to come back and haunt a theatre.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's why I still work at the Market Theatre a lot. A lot of people say, oh, geez, that part of town. And then
I know.
So go in the daytime, go on a Sunday afternoon, 3
Sure.
o'clock, no problem. And I've tried to convince them now to have Saturday matinees too. So you have a Saturday matinee at 2 and another one at 5 and do the same on Sunday. That's 4 shows you can take care of during the day. Because I know a lot of people say, a lot of my fans, so-called fans, or people say, come and see my plays. Oh, you're at the Market. Oh, I don't go into town anymore.
Yeah.
They must make a plan and make people go. But I'll go into the Market every night. I go into that hallway, that pub around the corner there. There's this big archway, which is the biggest archway in the Southern Hemisphere, and I walk into that thing. I feel the ghosts. I kind of like, I sense them. Barney, Billy, Ramalau, all of these guys. I'm thinking, geez, I sense these. And there's a kind of a presence. Obviously, I don't believe in ghosts or anything, but I have that sense that they're kind of still there. If they're anywhere, they're going to be there,
That's very special.
Yeah, it is very
That's
special.
actually goosebump stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, I can't think of a better place to draw this to a close. You've got work to do. I don't want to keep you here for longer than I promised we'd keep you here, and I think I've already broken my promise. Saturday night at the Palace is from the 28th of July to the 28th of August. Go and watch the show. It's absolutely awesome. Paul has been working on this for 41 years, and it's back. I mean, he put it on a long time ago, but it's back.
It's back.
So thank you so much, man. What an absolute pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you, Gareth. It's been great.
It's really good to see you, and best of luck with this and all the other things that you're still going to be doing.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.